I was a woman dying from a terminal illness. But to the man I loved, I was nothing. Even when I was alone in a hospital bed, begging for help, he was too busy fooling around with someone else. At the parking lot at the foot of the mountain, Tony Camel gently opened the car door for Julia Lopez, helped her in, and buckled her seatbelt with care. The car sped off, leaving Jason Smith behind in the dust. Gasping for breath, Jason Smith's lifeless eyes suddenly lit up. He hadn't seen wrong. That was Julia Lopez, alive. She was really alive. Julia Lopez was still alive. Jason Smith had been about to leave, but decided instead to renovate and decorate the memorial for her parents. He turned back to find the cemetery staff. After discussing the renovations, he never expected to see Tony Camel and Julia Lopez in the parking lot. It wasn't a hallucination. It couldn't be. Jason Smith ran back to her parents' tomb and saw the offerings laid there. Although it was the same mutai, pork floss cake, and baby's breath, they were clearly not his. Julia Lopez had been there. It really was her. The numb, broken shell he'd become was suddenly flooded with overwhelming joy. For the first time in forever, he felt truly alive. He immediately ordered someone to trace Tony Camel's license plate. It led to a small villa in the suburbs. Night fell. The air in the outskirts was fresh, and the stars could still be seen scattered across the sky. Jason Smith stood there hesitating. Part of him wanted to charge in and hold Julia Lopez tight, but now that he was so close, he was scared would she ever forgive him after choosing death to escape him. He rang the doorbell. As expected, Tony Camel answered. Seeing who it was, Tony Camel's face changed, and he instinctively tried to shut the door. "Don't close it." Jason Smith quickly held the door open. His tired eyes held rare desperation. "I know Julia Lopez is inside. I'm begging you." "She said she'd rather have her ashes scattered in the wind than left to you," Tony Camel sneered. "Give up already." Jason Smith wasn't even mad at Tony Camel's deception. All he could think about was that Julia Lopez was alive. He still had a chance to make things right, to love her again. He was terrified of returning to the soulless life he'd lived recently. He truly couldn't live without Julia Lopez. "I saw her at the cemetery. Tony Camel didn't let him finish. With a cold look, he cut him off. "So what?" "Dr. Tony, thank you for taking care of her," Jason Smith said humbly. "Let me take her abroad. I'll find the top specialists, spend everything I have. I just want her to live." "I can do that too, Mr. Jason. But sometimes, money can't buy a life. Like now." Tony Camel's voice was sharp. "The one who pushed her to the brink was you. If she hadn't seen your grand wedding announcement, her condition wouldn't have worsened so fast." "No, I didn't mean for that to happen." Jason Smith's hopeful eyes dimmed. He staggered back in disbelief. He came to make things right, to save her. With red eyes, he shouted toward the inside of the house. "Wife, Julia, I was wrong." Just thinking of that day sent Tony Camel's anger flaring. He roared, "She almost died that night because of you. You killed her. Aren't you afraid she'll be traumatized all over again if she sees you? Or are you just mad she didn't actually die?" Jason Smith was stunned into silence. After a moment, he pleaded, "I love her. I can't live without her. Please, let me see her." "The moment you decided to marry another woman, you lost the right to say you love her." Tony Camel's voice was ice. "No, actually, it was the moment you betrayed her. You were never worthy of Julia Lopez." Tony Camel shoved Jason Smith away and slammed the door shut. Back upstairs, Julia Lopez was still sitting in the rocking chair, a blanket over her lap, a book in hand. Her profile looked calm and serene. Seeing Tony Camel return, Julia Lopez gave him a faint smile. She set aside the book she hadn't turned a single page of since he left. Tony Camel sighed. "He saw us at the cemetery." Just my luck." Julia Lopez's eyes looked exhausted. Her voice was soft and hoarse. "I heard everything." Doing nothing still left her tired. A healthy, energetic body felt like a thing from a past life. Don't want to see him. I'll get sick of him again. When it comes to love, it's not just men who get tired. Jason Smith was greedy, never satisfied with what he had. Julia Lopez clung to years of love, retreating again and again until she could retreat no further. Once her bottom line was crossed, she could be terrifyingly decisive. Tony Camel felt a flicker of joy hearing that. He glanced at the fluttering window curtain and got up to close it. "Looks like it's going to rain." He paused As he looked out into the yard, Jason Smith was still there, kneeling in the rain. Julia Lopez acted as if she hadn't heard, flipping through her book. "What's for dinner?" she asked casually. "Whatever you want, I'll cook it." Tony Camel's eyes lit up. Julia Lopez rarely asked about food, given her poor appetite. Raindrops began tapping against the windows, but Julia Lopez's expression didn't change as she seriously pondered her meal. The rain poured down like beads onto Jason Smith's body, but he felt nothing. Compared to the suffering Julia Lopez had endured, this was nothing. He wished he could take her illness upon himself. Why did heaven choose to punish his betrayal by taking the one he loved most? Soaked to the bone, he remained motionless, kneeling stiffly, eyes fixed on the lit window upstairs. The rain continued through the night. When it finally stopped, the cold wind cut through him. Jason Smith felt like he was submerged in ice, numb and senseless. He trembled uncontrollably, face pale, hoping Julia Lopez would soften. But when the lights upstairs went out and the whole villa went dark, she still didn't open the door. He had brought this upon himself. The next morning, Tony Camel brought Julia Lopez her breakfast upstairs. "He's still kneeling outside," he said with a sigh. "Looks like he's burning up." The once confident, arrogant man now looked like a drowned rat, unshaven and flushed. It seemed he was playing the pity card. "Childish," Julia Lopez scoffed, though Tony Camel still worried she might give in. Julia Lopez frowned slightly, then pulled out her phone and dialed a number for the first time ever. The call connected. A surprised, almost frightened voice answered. "Who is this?" "Latina Mera. Come pick up Jason Smith," Julia Lopez said coldly. This number had called her several times late at night before Latina Mera came to provoke her, but had always hung up immediately. Julia Lopez had just been testing it. Turns out it really was Latina Mera's. Those times, Jason Smith was probably right beside her, and she just couldn't help showing off. Latina Mera was startled. She hadn't expected to hear Julia Lopez's voice again. Was she seeing a ghost in broad daylight? Are you a ghost or a person?" Julia Lopez sneered and hung up after giving her the address. Calmly finishing breakfast, Julia Lopez waited. Soon, Latina Mera's voice rang out from the courtyard in shock. Jason Smith weakly turned his head to see Latina Mera. For a moment, his mind couldn't register her presence. Tony Camel opened the door and kindly explained. "Julia Lopez called you here, Mrs. Jason. Come take your husband away." "What kind of Mrs. Jason is she?" Jason Smith snapped. "Ridiculous. My wife is Julia Lopez. Only Julia Lopez." His heart ached, and he swatted Latina Mera's hand away as she tried to help him up. Hearing that, Latina Mera clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. Though Jason Smith hadn't destroyed the Mera family, they had fallen from grace. She, the former heiress, had become a joke. And it was all because of Julia Lopez and this man, Tony Camel. If he hadn't interfered, the wedding wouldn't have been ruined. Especially since Julia Lopez faked her death to sabotage the ceremony so ruthless. "She said your wife is Latina Mera," Tony Camel sneered. "You had a grand wedding witnessed by the whole world." "No, that was all fake," Jason Smith gasped between sobs. "As long as Julia Lopez is alive, she's my wife. Julia Lopez. Julia Lopez. I only want Julia Lopez to be my wife." Fevered and delirious, Jason Smith's mind spun, his vision darkening. He barely managed to stay upright. Had Julia truly stopped wanting him? He used to get just a mild headache or a fever, and Julia would be so worried would she not even come out if he died here now. Tony Camel lost his patience. He tossed out coldly, "What's the point of kneeling here? It won't help her illness. Emotional stability is important for recovery. I shouldn't need to remind you," then went back inside. Latina Mera, suppressing her resentment, stepped forward again to help Jason Smith. "Jason, let me take you to the hospital." "Don't touch me." Jason Smith, though weak, still turned away with gritted teeth. He sneered. "Julia Lopez called you, so you came. Latina Mera, between the two of us, who's more pathetic? We're both shameless, just pathetic." Latina Mera's face turned from pale to livid. Jason Smith called Carlos Garcia to come pick him up and ignored her completely. He didn't even want to glance her way. How could he have hurt Julia Lopez for another woman? He even slapped her. He must have been out of his mind. Jason Smith stared blankly at his own hand. Suddenly, his eyes reddened. In a burst of madness, he smashed it against the ground. Though he was physically frail, the strength of his guilt-driven self-punishment was brutal within seconds. His hand was bloodied and raw. Latina Mera screamed and ran off. This man had gone mad. Jason Smith stumbled to his feet and headed out. Julia Lopez still hadn't come out. Had he really lost her? No, there was still a long life ahead. Once Julia Lopez recovered, there would be time. When Carlos Garcia arrived and saw the state of his boss, he was horrified. He had never seen Jason Smith this wrecked. Since Mrs. Jason was gone, the CEO had become a different man-like. His soul had followed Julia Lopez away, leaving behind an empty shell. At 30-something, a man's prime, Jason Smith already had streaks of gray in his hair. His eyes burned as he gripped Carlos Garcia's hand and ordered, "Search the globe for a matching bone marrow for Julia Lopez." Carlos Garcia almost thought his boss had lost his mind. He was one step from calling psych services. But when he learned Mrs. Jason was alive, he was genuinely overjoyed and immediately set to work reaching out to every possible donor registry. A week later, Carlos Garcia brought good news. "We got a hit from the US. There's a bone marrow match for Mrs. Jason. They'll be sending the profile soon." When the profile arrived and Carlos Garcia saw the name and photo, his hand trembled. What a small world. Jason Smith stared at Latina Mera's picture on the document, his expression dark, and headed straight to the Lynn residence. Latina Mera was just as surprised, then burst into laughter, laughing until she teared up. If Jason Smith hadn't come, she would have forgotten all about it. She had registered with the bone marrow bank back when she was studying in the US, hoping to impress her professor. If a match ever came up, she had plenty of excuses to refuse. But who would have thought of all people it was Julia Lopez? The woman she wished would disappear. This time, Latina Mera wouldn't back out, because this was the perfect bargaining chip.